start, I have a confession to make that ended up on Twitter 2 hours ago. Because one rule of security is don't trust anyone, and I left my MacBook here on the chair. So be careful. But yeah, you saw it. Yeah, I'd like to talk about Magento Security today. Part of it is the Magento Security Best Practices, but also like general advices for your daily workflow or tools and extensions that you can use to improve Magento security. Yeah, that's me. I've been working with Magento for more than 6 years now. I'm a lead Magento developer at E-CONOMIX. We are a Magento agency based in Austria, and our 2 offices are in Linz, which is the 3rd largest city of Austria, and in Völkl. So this is a headline that I found last summer that basically started the idea of the talk. So it was like, how to steal any developer's local database. So we spend a lot of time securing the live environment, I guess, and doing things wrong. But what's lying around in your development systems, in your development databases? And this is a proof of concept of how easy it is to steal a local memcache or Redis database. So there is also this website, this extractdata.club domain, where you can try to access your local Redis instances to steal one of your databases. I tried it like a few months ago and it worked back then, so you can also try it there. So the idea was, as I said, we shouldn't just think about securing the live system, but also think about the whole development lifecycle, development and staging environments, and what can go wrong there. Who is responsible for security? If you develop a Magento shop, if you develop a Magento extension, is it you? Is it the project manager? Is it the merchant? So this is a very nice study from Send on the PHP Pulse developer survey, they call it. It's from 2016, and they ask a lot of questions like, when do you plan to migrate to PHP 7? What are your biggest problems when working with PHP? And also one of those questions was, who is responsible? And as you can see, 48% of developers say it's the individual developers. So 48% say it's themselves. But there is also like 22% dev managers. It's not really clear, IT operations. So basically, I think it's not just one person that is responsible for the security of a Magento shop. It's like everyone has their own part in security. So for you as a developer, you should take care of security, of course, so that you don't end up saying, I didn't know it had to be secure. Let's start with the official Magento Security Best Practices. You can find them on the official Magento website. It's magento.com/security. You can also sign up for the Magento security alerts there. So when a new patch or a new update, security update is released, you will get the notifications instantly. One of the points in there is be prepared. So being prepared as a merchant who runs a Magento shop means starting with selecting the right agency or the right developer to do a job, one that you can trust, for example. Patch early. As we just had last week, the latest patch. Who already patched their Magento 1 shops or upgraded? I see a few hands up. Yeah. So as soon as a security release is out there, people can also easily find out how it can be exploited. So it's really important that you apply a security patch or apply a security upgrade as soon as possible. Also use magereport.com and the security scan. I'll talk about those, at least about the security scan later. So magereport.com is a tool. Who knows Magereport? Ooh, good. And who uses it regularly? Okay, pretty good. It's a tool which you can use for free. So you enter your Magento shop URL, and what it does is basically an external audit. So it checks what files are available, what APIs are available, what calls are possible against your Magento shop, and from there it can generate the external audit and detect if there is a patch applied or not, most of the time. It's a pretty cool tool created by Willem de Groot from the Netherlands, from Byte. So I recommend to use it regularly, not just only once, but always check what's going on, because you can also break something like a directory you've locked before and suddenly it's available again. Yeah. Also, monitor for signs of attack. So basically, as soon as a patch is out there, you should apply it immediately, and it also can be exploited pretty fast in your shop. One way to find out if your shop was compromised is like checking admin users. If an admin user was created, always check your log files. Contact your hosting provider if you run with one, what they can do to monitor for signs of attack. So this is also a very important part. Also, be prepared and have a disaster recovery plan, just in case if anything happens. So what's the plan if something really happens with your Magento shop and it was compromised? What do you do then? What does your merchant do? Do you inform the customers? When do you inform the customers? There is a pretty good response plan from Telesh, the person out there. I can tweet the link later. It's on GitHub available. So there's quite some stuff you can think about upfront. Some words about the Magento Security Scan. So this is an official Magento Security Scan, Magento's official security monitoring service, as noted by John Steer, who is the head of product security at Magento. And he just announced it, or he just presented it last Friday, I think, at Mage Titans in Austin in the US. And the security scan was basically announced at Imagine this year. So similar to like, for example, what is it called? Google, the tracking, like, no, it's not on PageSpeed, but analytics, yeah. You see, I'm not a SEO guy. So you have to claim ownership. So there, first you generate a code that you have to put into your header or footer to claim the ownership of your Magento shop. Because with Mage Report, you can basically scan any site that's out there. With the Magento Security Scan, you will only be able to scan your own Magento shop if you claim the ownership first. As the tool has access to your shop, it performs a code scan. So we have Mage Report, which does the external part, and we have soon the security scan, which does the internal part, where you can sign up to. There is some official news coming within the next few days. So make sure to follow the Magento Twitter account and also the Magento blog for the latest news about the security scan. Some extensions that I can recommend. The first list of extensions is for Magento 1, because I guess pretty much of you will also be supporting Magento 1 shops currently. And not just work with Magento 2, that would be my dream, but well, agency life. The first one that I can recommend is EW native passwords. So Magento comes in Magento 1 per default with an MD5 and SHA 256 encryption for passwords. And this one uses the PHP native function to encrypt passwords. This works with PHP 5.5 and above, but there is also a compatibility library for 5.3. I didn't try it, but as I know, there are quite some shops still running on PHP 5.3 out there, which is not good, but well, it's life. Yeah, it's also possible to use it with 5.3. The next one is the two-factor authentication. So basically, when you log in somewhere, you enter a password. That's one factor. It's one password that you know. But it's even more secure if you add a second factor to this login. So a password that you know, and the second factor is something that you have. And in this case, it's your mobile phone with a Google Authenticator app, where you get a code generated, which you also have to enter. So basically, to log in, you need to know something, the password, and you need to have something, the Google Authenticator app on your mobile. And this is one I created years ago with Philip Jackson during an online Mage Hack Day, and was continued during several hackathons. I know of quite some people who use it in production, so it's good to use and to go. This one is admin password strength. because the standard admin password length in Magento 1 is, I think, 7 characters. And with this one, you can increase the standard password length. So as soon as you enable this application, you have to have admin passwords with at least 10 characters. Then the password strength. So with the ShopLiebe password strength module, you can also define the rules that a password has to meet. So per default, it's alphanumeric, so numbers and letters. And in this case, you can also define if it needs to contain a special character, uppercase, lowercase. Yeah. And this one is also pretty cool. This is from Fabian Blechschmidt, E-CONOMIX on GitHub. It's the password-based key derivation function too. So this is actually pretty advanced. So you can configure iteration count for your passwords, and it also increases the strength of your passwords. So one thing that you need to know if you install the extensions, everything is like before. The passwords are only updated to the new hashing algorithm as soon as they log in the first time. And it also does not only affect the customer passwords, but also the admin passwords and the API users. So this is pretty useful. And once they log in, the new hashing algorithm is applied. Next thing is configuration monitoring. This is also for Magento 1, by the way. Another one from Fabian Blechschmidt. This is the strict transport security. I hope a lot of your shops run on HTTPS. And if you run on HTTPS, your website is still vulnerable to downgrade attacks. So this means a browser or a client can still connect to your shop via HTTP. And with the HSTS, which is the strict transport security, you'll add an additional security header to your request, and your shop and your request is only available via HTTPS and is not available via HTTP anymore. So if you run on HTTPS, please also make sure you enable HSTS. You don't necessarily need to use the extension. You can also set it via htaccess or via nginx config. It's usually just one line to add. Next one is IP security. I guess this is what most people will have in place also via htaccess or web server config to restrict access to staging and testing environments, or even better, to restrict IP access to the admin panel, because there is no need to make it worldwide available. You can restrict it to certain networks or network ranges. Then there is Magento admin monitoring. This is especially interesting for community edition Magento 1 projects. In Magento Enterprise, there is this admin actions log already on board. You can use it to find out what's going on in your shop. So usually when a shop is compromised, one of the first things the attacker does is creating an admin user. So you can basically find out what was going on with which user. Take care, because this is logging a lot to your database, so it will basically blow it up pretty fast. But you can configure which actions from which user you want to log. So make sure you check this out before you activate it. This one is also pretty cool, from NexusNet, the alarm bell. As I said, one of the first things that an attacker usually does is creating an admin user. And this extension detects if an admin user was created and sends you a notification about it. So as soon as something happens in the live system, you will get a notification. That's pretty useful. And what is also very useful is an integration to Slack. So if you use Slack at work, you can use these extensions, one of these two, to connect it to your Slack panel. Maybe you'll have, I don't know, project-specific Slack channels or a channel one for Magento projects. So you can get a notification there if there are failed login attempts, if there are any login attempts. And actually it helped me when we had like logins like crazy, and I've seen it immediately in my Slack, and we can stop it pretty fast. Some extensions for Magento 2. First one is module secure passwords. This is from Daniel Slova, I think, from the Netherlands. more or less the same as with Magento 1. So Magento 2 uses SHA-256 for passwords, and this one uses the PHP native password hash and password verify functions. It's backwards compatible as well, which is cool to use. Then the Git status security report, which is from a US agency. So you can use this one if you have your Git directory available in the live system, which you, I don't know, deploy or not. But please make sure to lock that Git folder down in the live system. And if you have Git available in your live system, this extension can detect if any files were changed. So this is also very useful, again, to see if something was happening. And then, Riccardo is here. There is a whole Mage specialist security suite. They're from Italy. One of the cool things is the two-factor authentication for Magento 2, the user lockout, the admin IP restrictions. So they have a lot of Magento 2 extensions about security to check out. I really recommend to have a look. And if you have any questions, Riccardo is here, so he can answer it even better than I can. So the next thing is, who has access to your code? So usually when you have a Git repository somewhere, several people have access. Like, at least it's you, but it's you and your colleague, or your GitLab server, your Bitbucket if it lies somewhere, an external developer who is working on it, several integrations and deployment tools. So basically any one of these persons or services can access your code. So with any person or service you add, you basically extend your circle of trust. Yeah. But you don't really want everyone to have access to all the keys you probably store in your code. So one point is isolate the environments, for example, and also like different environments have different requirements, right? Because, I don't know, on dev and on staging you might have different payment options that you need for testing, or any other folders available for testing, as well as production should be really locked down. So one thing that I can really recommend is separating your keys, your access keys, for example, from your code. Don't exclude them, don't include them in your code. Put them in the database and get them from there via the config, for example. Like here, if anyone needs an Amazon S3 key, just go to GitHub and find one. This is how it looks, for example. Yeah. And just imagine everyone that has access to your Git repository can do the same with the keys you included in your code. And this might be details about the payment service provider, about any external integrations, and they can access all these things as well. Another thing I would like to talk about, this is one of my favorites, I'm so annoying about this, I know, but I get bored of dumping big databases and importing them again. That's boring. So the first thing, this is not really a security aspect, this is just about me not waiting too long. So I guess every one of you knows the N98 Mage Run tool, which is very, very cool. And they have this database dump. So what most developers do is they just add db dump and then something is generated. But they have this very cool strip option where you can generate a strip database dump, which removes the log entries from your database, all those data flow, temp tables, and so on. Even better, I don't need all of the 100, 200, 300,000 customers in my development environment, at least not all the time. I don't need all the 1,000, 100,000, 1 million orders in my development environment, and even not their payment data. So this is also one thing that you can get rid of. And there is a strip at development. So basically this also removes all the trade data, the customer data, the sales data. And you will be surprised how small your database dumps are. And you don't have to wait ages to generate it, to download it, to import it somewhere again. So this is very useful. And I think it also increases security because you don't have any customer-specific data in your store. You can also use an anonymizer if you really need a specific customer in your development environment. And especially depending on what payment services and methods you use, you don't have any payment data in your environment. Most of the time you won't need it. And if you need it, you can still create a full dump. Yeah. One thing that's also very useful is use an environment configuration tool. It must not be a very fancy tool. This is also a part of like preventing errors, but also another thing about preventing, forcing security. So there are basically these things that I found for managing your environment configurations. The first one is the LimeSoda environment configuration, where you can define via an XML how to automatically set your base URL for the development system, enabling or disabling things you need. For example, in Magento 2, you can enable HSTS via the system configuration, but you probably won't have an HTTPS certificate on your dev environment, so you can also use an environment configuration tool to disable this locally. You can just create an N98 script, which is just a shell script where you add the N98 config set commands, for example, and there are also CTI Magento configurator and Harris Street import export out there. I haven't tried those two personally, but I know people working with them. So I think this really helps speeding up your development and preventing, first of all, embarrassing errors, which, I don't know, you don't accidentally send emails to clients from your development or staging systems. And also you can remove and unset data that you don't need. Another thing to take care of is code analysis. In this case, it's static code analysis, which basically takes your code base and checks if you used any insecure PHP functions, followed PHP coding guidelines, all these things. Those three are very well known out there, so you might check out to use one of these. This is pretty cool, that goes in my code quality section as well. This is Gram PHP from a Belgian company, from PH Pro. This is something that you can run locally. So this is running the tests via Git hooks, and it's of course intended to improve your code base. So anytime you're about to commit something, the Git hook runs and also performs the checks you've defined before. This helps your colleagues, of course, to write better code because yours is, of course, good. And one example is to include the SensioLab security checker. So with this tool, you can check you can upload your Composer JSON and check if you use any libraries that have known vulnerabilities. And you can use it with Gram PHP. So this happened to me before. You probably won't be able to read this, but I used Gram PHP on a project some time ago, and I had some requirements in there in my Composer JSON, and as soon as I was about to commit it, Gram PHP says, nope, the beardy man. In this case, it was about Composer itself and the cache injection vulnerability, so I just had to upgrade Composer, but it would have also detect if there was any vulnerable requirement I'm using in my project. Yeah, I was talking about the security advisory before. So there are basically 3 ways how you can check your Composer JSON for security related problems. So you can upload upload the Composer log, of course, not the Composer JSON. You can use a web service curl, and you can also use it with the PHP checker and with the command line tool. One thing that's also very useful is the Magento malware scanner. That's also a tool created from Willem de Groot from Byte from the Netherlands. This is very easy to use and to check, especially if you've taken over a project from another agency or merchant. This is one text file that you download, and then you run a grep on the code base, and then it will output if you have any files using one of the known malware signatures. The Magento Project Mess Detector from AOE and Fabrizio Branca. So usually when we take over a new project, we use this tool to find out if they have followed the best practices in Magento development, if there are any code pool overrides, if they've modified any core files. But if you get an urgent call from someone who is, well, very in need of an agency to fix their shop because it was compromised or hacked, and they don't have, for example, a source control like a Git available, you can also use the Project Mess Detector to see if there was anything hacked. So, of course, you can check if there was a developer hacking core files or if there was something compromised if you don't have a version control. And this is also pretty cool. It's the admin password cracking. This is an add-on for N98 Mage Run. In this case, it's for Hypernode, for ByteNL, which is Hypernode crack admin passwords, and then you can define a rule set. And I've run this on one of our own Magento shops and added some users just to try. And I know lazy developers add during development a user that's called def and has a password def. And sometimes it happens that this def user ends up in the live system. So this one was pretty easy to crack. So even if I had the Xdebug enabled, it was cracked within a few seconds. See, 5 seconds with a weak password. So not just you should have a secret password, but also your merchants should have a secure password. And please always make sure those development users don't end up in the live and production database. We're pretty good on time. Oh, we are on time, I need to be fast. One last thing. I just updated my Chrome, and my recent version of Chrome is 61. And in Chrome 62, there will be a warning shown on HTTP websites. So if they lack an HTTPS certificate, all users will be warned. So I guess this is one more reason, of course, for you and your merchants to move to HTTPS if you didn't already. Last but not least, so here's my to-do, my homework for you. Yeah, read the Magento Security Best Practices, the official ones. Sign up for the Magento Security Alerts. Always check your code. Remove settings, keys from your code. HTTPS all the way, as I just said. And there are a lot of very talented and smart people who tweet about security pretty often, so make sure to follow them. Yeah, I'll just leave this as my last slide. Thanks a lot and enjoy lunch. I will be here for some more questions if you want, otherwise we can discuss them during lunch.